I love the future. Well, not really. The future is taxes, watching Ninja Theory get shut down, and talking to my ex-wife about child support. No, don't worry, I'm just kidding. I don't have a wife. Or kids. Or a lot. But hey, you know what I do have? A copy of Fallout 4 and a YouTube channel. And what better combination than to evaluate how strong militaristically the Institute are from Fallout 4. Are they truly the most technologically advanced faction out of all the factions in Fallout 4? Is the Institute Corsa the most advanced piece of weaponry and soldier the Fallout universe has ever seen? And of course, the most important question in this mini-series so far, is the Institute militaristically stronger than the Brotherhood of Steel? But wait, what's this? I'm extremely close to 1,000 subscribers? That means you need to subscribe right now and hit the bell so you can keep all notifications on. By doing this, you're helping me one day make money. Thank you. No, but on a real, the support all of you give me on these videos means truly a lot to me. This is the job I want to do and continue doing, so thank you all so much for your support, and I hope you enjoyed the video. Thank you. The Institute is an extremely advanced faction located somewhere under the Commonwealth. The Institute is mostly made up of members from the field of science, or if you want to sound like a normal person, scientists. The Institute at their core believe that people above ground are completely doomed, and the only way that humanity can survive this post-apocalyptic world or even thrive and learn to recreate itself is through science and through staying under the ground. The Institute from a human front, like I said before, is mostly just made up of scientists. And I mention human front because, to be honest with you, the Institute is more machine than it really is human. The Institute uses robots, or rather beings called synths, to do their dirty work for them. Synths are used for many things, and help in many things. They help the Institute maintain their base, fight their battles, and even do trade. Synths are the complete backbone of the Institute, and they might just be the most advanced bit of technology we have ever seen in the Fallout world. But let's break it down a little bit more, so it makes a bit more sense. There are 3 types of synths, 3 generations, and the first one is the Generation 1 synth. The Gen 1 synth is inherently robotic, and extremely weak to all types of gunfire. On the surface of the Commonwealth, Gen 1 synths are only really used as cannon fodder, and are equipped with the Institute's standard issue laser rifle or laser pistol. The Institute's version of the Brotherhood laser rifle and pistol do around 15 to 20 damage, which is notably worse than the Brotherhood's versions. Something interesting to note, however, is that they are quite expensive, selling at around 50 bottle caps, which is pretty good in terms of guns. It's also interesting to note that nearly every single Institute synth will only use one of these 2 guns. No matter whether the synth is Gen 1, Gen 2, or Gen 3 courses, they normally still use these fairly weak and redundant laser weapons, which I find interesting when there are far better alternatives, such as the Brotherhood's version of their own weapon, the laser rifle. Now, I will say you can sometimes find that the Institute have modified these laser weapons, which do make them significantly better. However, it's quite rare, and you normally have to find courses for this to be the case, or Gen 2 synths. Oh, and also I can hear you all typing your horrible comment, telling me that Gen 1 synths actually also use laser batons, so there you go, I've said it. And yes, they have been seen using Commonwealth weaponry, however I want to note that it is much more rare to see a synth using weaponry outside of the Institute. However, it can happen. And I feel like this sort of thing would only ever happen if the Institute's synths had ran out of ammo for their primary laser weaponry. Okay, so what are Gen 2 synths like? Well, they're basically just a better, more upgraded and armoured version of Gen 1 synths. I personally believe that Gen 2 synths were made far better in terms of fighting and combat, as they can be seen sporting some good quality armor, and also are just a lot more resilient to any types of gunfire. They use the same weaponry as the Gen 1s. I must give props to the Institute here, because the Gen 2 synths really do feel like they were made in mind for combat. They seem far stronger than Gen 1 synths and can actually do some damage, and are quite tough as well. Now, finally, what about the newest version of the synth? the Gen 3 synths. Gen 3 synths are completely different to Gen 1 and 2 synths. They are made with almost bio-human-like materials to graft a synth to make it look identical to a real human. These synths are faster, stronger, and overall better than their counterparts, and they are called coursers. Coursers do for the most part use the Institute's laser weaponry, however have been sighted using different weaponry as well, Commonwealth weaponry. Now is also a good time to note that there are many different forms of synths, such as attacking synths, undercover synths, and even just regular old maintenance and cleaning synths. In terms of numbers, there are around 520 members of the Institute, including synths. From the information and evidence I've gathered through my research, I can estimate that 120 of these members are all scientists. We can take an estimate that there are around 250 Gen 1 synths, as these synths are used for pretty much everything, cleaning, fighting, etc. I believe for Gen 2 synths there's around 100 of them, however this is extremely hard to tell. Now the reason I think there's around 100 Gen 2 synths is because we don't see them all that often, and when we do, they're basically just doing what Gen 1 synths do, but a lot better and a lot better equipped. Gen 2 synths have the best armor, best equipment, and are made a lot more resilient than Gen 1 synths. Therefore it's logical to propose that there wasn't as many Gen 2 synths made as Gen 1 synths, considering they fill the same demand bracket. And then finally, I think there are around 50 to 60 Generation 3 synths, aka coursers. I think this because we don't really see many coursers in game.
Are you here for the synth?
I'm here to pick up an order. 2 large pepperoni and a calzone. Name is fuck you.
We are told that not many Gen 3 synths actually make it through their training properly to become a qualified courser, so they then just have their memory wiped and shipped onto something else. Coursers also function a lot more like actual humans, so I think the Institute would have a lot in their hands to actually maintain and take care of them. That's why I think their number's a bit lower. This is definitely why you should subscribe, because trying to crunch these numbers was not easy to do, so please subscribe. Yeah, for some reason it's just really hard to actually find a proper number for the Institute, considering how many scientists and then Gen 1, 2, and 3 synths there are, so yeah, it was difficult. In terms of their equipment, I think there are around 700 laser weapons in the Institute itself, and an endless, uncopious amount of supplies, whether that's building, medical, or cleaning. I think the Institute have more than enough supplies. There's also probably around 100 synths relay grenades, which is call-in basically synth backup grenades if you're on the field. Plus, at the start of the game, they have one human agent on the field called Kellogg, so I'll give them a point for that. Out of the 250 Gen 1 synths, they have about 200 in service, and out of the 100 Gen 2 synths, they have about 60 in active service. Then out of the 55 coursers, I reckon they have around 20 to 30 on the field. Plus, of course, Kellogg, which brings their active troop count to about 280, which is very high. So in total, for their numbers and equipment, this is their final statistics. Okay, so now let's talk about the Institute's base. And this one's actually quite interesting, because the 3 other bases are located on the surface of the Commonwealth, of course, with the 4th one being the exception, the Institute base. The Institute's base is located under the CIT ruins in the Commonwealth. The Institute is a decent bit deep into the ground, and is basically just one big circular base with an elevator that runs through the middle of it. The base is pretty much only protected from the inside by Gen 2 synths and the occasional coursers, carrying of course their synth laser weaponry. The base is kitted out. It has a doctor, an item seller, some place you can eat. The base has housing for scientists, and it even has a bio lab where their own food is grown, and fun fact, they keep fucking gorillas, so they can have a point for that.
Alright, so here we are, one of the
Gorillas.
They also obviously have a synth production site, and then they have a location dedicated to science around coursers. Now we need to talk about how hard the Institute would be to find, because I'd argue that that is their biggest strength in defense, the fact that it's not actually located on any Commonwealth map. So without the help of the sole survivor, how hard would it be for the 3 other factions in the game to find the Institute? First, you would have to know that the Institute used teleportation to get in and out of the base, which is pretty obvious. However, you'd then probably have to find Virgil and work with him to build a teleporter to gain entrance into the Institute if that is the route you want to take. And well, for one faction in particular, working with Virgil would be very difficult.
There is another matter we need to discuss. Virgil. As long as that abomination lives, he's a threat to the Brotherhood. The time has come to deal with him.
I'll take care of it, Captain.
I mean, I'm not pointing any fingers at any factions, but let's just say they probably wouldn't like his skin color. So that wipes the Brotherhood of Steel out of the question straight away. I mean, I'm sure the Brotherhood of Steel could find the Institute without Virgil, I just think they'd find it a lot more difficult. And as for the Railroad, they're clearly fucking useless, because they even have an inside contact who is located in the Institute, but yet they still don't really know where the location of it is. Or they just never tell you. Who fucking knows with the Railroad? But hey, I'll give the Railroad the benefit of the doubt. They are the most qualified to be able to actually locate where the Institute is, considering they could probably just ask their friend in the Institute, or their friend of their friend, or any synth they've got out of the Institute. And well, while I think the Minutemen could find the Institute base, as they're in touch with people and they know the exact people to ask with the exact right information, I'm not sure they'd actually do anything with this information. Finding the location of the Institute is extremely hard to do. You have to kill a Courser, you have to build a teleporter, which is extremely hard to do in of itself because of the extremely complex technology you're messing around with. All this, of course, is great for the Institute themselves. And even if a faction did find out or discover the location of the Institute base, they'd have to A, if they wanted to brute force it, find something strong enough that could blast through the fucking Earth and then the Institute's outer layer to enter the base, or B, find an extremely secret way to actually enter the base itself. So the base from this point of view is great. However, what about the actual inside of the Institute? Well, I won't lie, it's not great. The base isn't exactly very protected very well from the inside. Don't get me wrong, there are synths protecting the base from the inside, and there are a lot of courses, but you stick any number of Brotherhood Knights in the Institute and they're pretty much clearing it out, and the same goes for any other faction. There's a lot of numbers, the Institute aren't going to be able to hold them off for very long. The scientists themselves aren't very trained, so they don't put up much of a fight whatsoever. The inside is quite shocking. You'd think the place that makes synths would actually be better at defending its inside, but it's not. The place is built in a massive circle formation, which makes it very hard for the synths to fortify or protect any certain locations. And bear in mind that most synths within the Institute are only there for maintenance, or to look after plants, or to clean the floors, then you don't actually have a lot of well-trained synths ready to fight. The courses that are there will get overwhelmed by whatever faction's numbers are in the Institute, even a faction like the Railroad. I also find it rather peculiar why the Institute don't have like any turrets in their main circle area. They have turrets in the compartment bays, but not in the main circle area. It doesn't really make much sense to me. But to be fair to the Institute, it's not exactly an easy place to wipe off the map. You have to blow up their main reactor, and to do that, you have to fight off their best synths. Now, in terms of their main base, this is it. But the Institute has many other locations of operations across the Commonwealth, both before the Institute ending and afterward. I'm not going to talk about every single base the Institute has set up because they have a lot set up, but I will talk about one main one, the one that you find Kellogg in. Fort Hagen is set up and protected extremely well by the Institute, and I think it shows how well the Institute can operate with their synths outside of the Commonwealth, and how good their bases truly can be when being set up by synths, or set up by a hired gun like Kellogg. At first glance, I didn't think the Institute base was very impressive, but on second glance, I have to take a step back and really think about all the steps required to even enter the fucking base. I mean, first of all, you have to find out where it is, and then once you've found out where it is, you have to find out how you're going to get in the base, and then once you do that, once you're in the base, you have to have enough numbers to overwhelm the synths, which are quite well trained and very well equipped for the Institute base, and then you have to fight your way through some of their strongest synths just to blow up their reactor, and then you have to find a way to get out of the Institute before the whole place goes fucking boom. So because of all this, I'm going to rank the Institute a 75% effectiveness for their base on the effectiveness scale. Now let me talk about the Institute tactics, because they're quite interesting. Out of all the factions in Fallout 4, the Institute, I must say, used the most wide variety of different forms of tactics and different game plans. Unlike other factions in Fallout 4, which for the most part only use one unanimous tactic for the whole army/faction fighting force, the Institute may use several, depending on what generation of synth they have active in combat. For example, like I said before, Gen 1 synths in combat and in tactics are mostly just used as cannon fodder. Sometimes they're used to hold small bases that the Institute don't put much value on, but other than that, they're not used for much. We also know that the Institute gives agents on the Commonwealth Gen 1 synths as reinforcements. The Institute mostly just use Generation 1 synths as cannon fodder, for backup, for holding areas they don't put much value on, or for helping agents in the field. Now the Generation 2 synths are much more like a unified army. They have better armor, they have better tactics, and they overall are used to deal with actual faction to faction issues, and not just Commonwealth squabbles. Gen 2 synths are normally used for actual real-life Institute battles with other factions, and deploy much like an army, being sent with one task and one task only, to clear out whatever hostiles are in their way. Gen 2 synths are also used to go onto the field of the Commonwealth with scientists to get talented individuals into the Institute. When the Institute deems someone from the Commonwealth talented and someone that they may need working for them, they'll normally send some scientists along with a few Generation 2 synths. The Gen 2 synths will simply be there to protect the scientists and make sure everything goes to plan. Overall, Gen 2 synths are basically the foot soldiers of the Institute. If Gen 1s deal with minor squabbles and little areas that need clearing out, Gen 2 synths are the ones that actually go into combat with other factions. Now finally, there are two different types of Generation 3 synths that the Institute use, / the coursers. The first type is of course the generic and classic courser type we all know and love. The type that will go into an area and are mostly sent out to clear out hostiles and retrieve an Institute synth that has got lost / gone rogue. These types of coursers are incredibly feared and dangerous across the Commonwealth, and are known sort of as a boogeyman. These types of coursers are known to go into an area and clear it out with no trace that anyone was ever there to start with. Really wish gameplay reflected this. Coursers are stronger, faster, and overall better equipped than normal humans, so they can normally wipe out a good group of settlers on their own. Now the second type of courser is the more feared courser around the Commonwealth, the Snatcher. These coursers are creepy and dangerous for a different reason. They will normally infiltrate settlements in the Commonwealth and replace someone with power in it with a synth. A prime example of this would be Mayor McDonough, who is Diamond City's mayor, in which Mayor McDonough is actually a Generation 3 synth, and the reason why he is a synth is so that the Institute can control the Commonwealth from below ground with their synths above ground. They influence the very decisions the government above ground make with their synths and coursers, snatching people in the night and simply replacing them with a robotic synth, but no one knows the difference.
Put the gun down now!
He's a synth! He'll kill us all!
No! Okay, show's over. There are no synths in Diamond City. Hear me? Just you folks and your damn paranoia.
However, these are simply just the tactics of each individual synth unit. What about when the Institute needs to formulate a proper attack? Well, the Institute's main force of attack in tactics is a wave tactic. But to truly understand how this wave tactic works, we need to look at the Institute's biggest feat. Also, really fucking funny side note here, I forgot to actually add in my evaluation score for the Brotherhood's tactics in my last video, so if you want to find out what the Brotherhood's tactics score will be, it'll be in the description of this video and the Brotherhood video, so sorry about that guys. Now, the Institute's greatest feat in my opinion is their assault on the Brotherhood, because this is not only something that is incredibly hard to pull off, but it also requires some very great tactics. The Institute's main strategy for when it comes to dealing with other factions in the Commonwealth Commonwealth is using a wave-based assault. Starting off with their weaker Gen 1 synths, throughout a battle the Institute will slowly, gradually build up their force's power, starting off with Gen 1 synths, then moving through to Gen 2 until they get to the best of their best synths, slowly wearing down their enemy both in the morale sector and in the physical sector. It's important to know that this strategy is best shown in the Institute's assault on the Minutemen, where the Institute try to wipe out the Minutemen by slowly building their forces up through the different generations of synths and then wiping out the Minutemen by overwhelming them. But this is not the Institute's best feat, not by a long shot, because if the castle base and the Minutemen are well equipped, well defending the castle and have a lot of numbers, then the Institute won't even be able to enter the castle base by using their wave strategy. The Institute's real best feat is their assault and complete annihilation of the Brotherhood. Now, the Brotherhood of Steel are incredibly wary about the Institute and their synths, and they don't like that the Institute could teleport into the Brotherhood base at any moment or given time. So the BOS install generators that block the Institute's teleportation system so that the Institute can't teleport into the Brotherhood base. Now, the Institute's plan involves sending an agent into the Brotherhood to take out these 3 generators that block the Institute's ability to teleport into the base, then teleporting synths into the base using their wave system to build up their numbers and forces, while at the same time using the Brotherhood of Steel's most powerful weapon against them and obliterating the Brotherhood at the end of the battle with it. However, for this plan to work, the Institute needs to wait quite a while for Liberty Prime's systems to switch over to evaluate the Brotherhood as the enemy and not the Institute. So this is a prime example of when the Institute uses their wave strategies. They first teleport in Gen 1 and Generation 2 synths, and then slowly as the battle goes on build up their synths until they get to their most powerful coursers and synths. Now, I personally think this feat is incredibly impressive, because not only do they take out a faction with far less numbers than that said faction, they're also taking on a faction that literally has anti-teleportation devices that stop the Institute even entering their base. Now, yes, you could argue that the Institute do heavily rely on the lone survivor to do this mission successfully and to carry the team in. However, if they had not had him, I'm sure they would have found a replacement. For example, Kellogg. Also, not only do they turn the Brotherhood of Steel's most incredible feat of engineering against them, they also have time to teleport out of there safely, protecting and saving, well, at least one of their synths.
No, wait.
You gotta think as well, this sends a serious fucking message to the Brotherhood of Steel across the wasteland: do not fuck with the Institute. And from what we can see in game, this message certainly works, because there's no other Brotherhood presence that are seen entering the Commonwealth after this, just remnants of the Brotherhood. This feat not only shows how incredibly powerful the Institute can be, it also shows how incredibly smart their strategics are. They manage to be completely outnumbered by the Brotherhood and be on their turf and still be able to hold the Brotherhood's Liberty of Prime while using their overwhelmingly powerful wave strategy. You gotta think as well, the Brotherhood of Steel's morale must not have been very good whatsoever throughout the fight, because the more and more synths they kill, the more and more are just deployed, and they get stronger and stronger. That would make me shit myself. I'm fighting tin cans and then suddenly a fucking courser drops in? Fuck that.
What the fuck? That's not fair! That's not fair!
So overall, I'm going to give the Institute's tactics a 70% effectiveness on the effectiveness scale. I know I've just licked their glizzy for quite a... No, I'm not fucking keeping that in. I know I've just been riding the Institute's strategy, but I'm going to tell you why they haven't got 100% on the effectiveness scale. And it's simply because I feel like if you have a team or a force that is incredibly well fortified, hunkered down, and in a good base like we see with the Minutemen defenses, then the Institute synths won't be able to get through. But overall, through and through, I think this strategies are quite good. Now let's talk about the Institute's leader, because that's something that's incredibly important. The leader of the Institute is Father, the overseer of the whole Institute. Out of all the faction leaders in Fallout 4, Father is by far the oldest, being believed to be around 60 years old when the events of Fallout 4 are taking place, and he has a very strange look on the world. Father, or Sean for short, has a very scientific look on the world, because he is a scientist through and through. Sean is clearly looked up to and loved by by many of his peers in the science team in the Institute, as a lot of them talk about how great he is non-stop. Sean truly believes that the Commonwealth is doomed and the only way humanity can survive is by staying under the ground. Though Sean is a scientist, he is one with quite a weird and cruel sense. He deems negotiations with other factions to be pointless and a waste of time, even though he's never tried, and he looks on the people of the Commonwealth very cruelly, not caring whatsoever about what happens to any of them.
The Brotherhood of Steel covets technology, and has made it clear that we cannot peacefully coexist.
And he overall has a very apathetic look on the world he's in. Sean has what at first seems like a very democratic science team and board which help him make decisions in the Institute.
National Airport remains occupied, with Brotherhood presence noted at several other points throughout the Commonwealth. Intelligence suggests that this railroad continues to operate and is becoming more ambitious. SRB agents are monitoring all known situations, sir.
Very good, thank you. It's clear that our safety needs to be the primary concern going forward. To that end, where are we on Phase 3?
Excuse me, but sir, are you sure this is, well, the proper time to be discussing that?
However, the cracks soon reveal in this board when we see that Sean can override any of the scientists' power and simply do whatever he wants.
Right now, the future of the Institute is at stake. The Institute cannot survive without leadership. The Directorate must continue to govern with the best interest of all in mind. To that end, I am naming my father as my successor.
Oh, boy.
You can't be serious!
Really?
How can you possibly justify this? He isn't one of us. He isn't even a scientist.
Ignoring your borderline, insubordinate tone, I will simply say this. The Institute has enough scientists. What it needs is a leader.
It's almost like he has a puppet government set up for the Institute to believe that they have some sort of power when they actually don't, and it's all really run by Sean himself. Sean as a leader from a militaristic point of view is not that bad, but he's also not great either. He never plans any battles or large attacks on his enemies. He normally leaves that to his scientists or people below him to do, which isn't a bad thing. However, at the same time, he often comes off as very weak, as we never see him in any actual battles, and he's normally just sat doing nothing while his men are fighting the battles. Or sorry, I should say his synths are fighting the battles. He especially seems weak when you compare him to any other faction leaders in the game. Sean is overall not a bad leader, but he's not a great one either. We can see when his people can completely turn against him and lose all faith and trust in him.
But of course they wouldn't listen. What's going on? Dr. Higgs and Dr. Loken have decided to protest your appointment as father's successor. They've taken control of the bioscience security systems and cut off our food supply.
Change our minds, then you're wasting your time.
I know you're angry, but there's a better way to handle this.
Oh, you're wrong. You see, I've tried talking. For years, I've suggested that we do things differently here, but nobody listens. Let's see if anyone can afford to ignore me now.
If they lied about Dr. Virgil, who knows what else they've been lying about? Or what their plans are for my work. I'll make my way back to the Brotherhood. But I'm going to have to do it on my own.
Which is extremely dangerous for the Institute. He is unempathetic and pretty much gives his people power that they don't actually have. However, you can't debate that he isn't very liked in the Institute, because people do seem to love and look up to Sean. And the science breakthroughs he's made in the Institute have been incredibly important. So for all those reasons, I'm going to give Sean a 50% effectiveness on the effectiveness scale for leadership. Now let's talk about the Institute's chain of command. And to be honest, it's just not very good. Like I said before, on the surface, the Institute truly does seem to operate like a democracy of sorts, but when you dig under that, it's simply not true. You see, there are lots of different divisions within the Institute. Bioscience, advanced systems, robotics, and synth retention. All of these divisions have their own division heads, and then under them are the scientists working within the divisions. Now this, I must say, does help keep the Institute extremely organized and helps the Institute run to a T. This also helps because that that means everyone in the Institute knows what division they're under, and it also means that they know what boss or person they need to report to. However, the chain of command is not all good. The Institute's leader is Father, however who's under him is quite confusing. It's supposed to be the Institute's board, who act as the Institute's government, however that Institute's government don't really have any real power, which leads to many members in the Institute and on the board especially to feel undermined, and often even feel betrayed. This leads to a lot of the members of the Institute to completely lose their trust and faith in Father. Even some of them go as far to completely betray Father. And I think that speaks for itself. If you have members in your faction betraying you, then clearly the government system you have in place just isn't working. The problem is that the Institute's board have no real power, other than planning all of Father's battles for him. The board has no real power, and the Institute's people have no real power, and that's the problem. For all these reasons, I'm going to have to give the Institute's chain of command a 50% effective on the effectiveness scale. They work for the divisions and for a militaristic side of the Institute, but not for the overall goals and faction side of the Institute. Now let's talk about the US military and compare the Institute to them. The Institute does not compare to the US in many ways, however they definitely compare in how they use their technology to attack their enemy. The US, much like the Institute, are known for having the best of the best technology on the battlefield. However, if I had to pick a modern military to compare to the Institute, I would pick the Chinese military. Now obviously the Institute don't have the numbers like the Chinese army do, however the Institute's wave techniques makes them feel like they have a lot more troops than they actually do and are able to wear and tear down their enemy. A good example of this for the Chinese army is when they did this in the Korean War, using as many forces as they could to take down their enemy. China supposedly also has some very advanced technology that they use on the battlefield, much like the Institute. Hell, they even kind of use wave tactics like the Institute do. But this is just my take on what military is most comparable to the Institute. What do you guys think? Let me know in the comments down below. The Institute on the surface level are an extremely powerful faction that eliminate any enemy in their way with their overwhelming wave tactics. Their Generation 3 synth courses are feared across the Commonwealth, and their technology is unlike any other factions seen in Fallout 4. The Institute's base is extremely well hidden, and their troops are scattered all over the Commonwealth. However, under that curtain, the Institute suffers from a poor leader who comes across as weak and uncaring for even his own men sometimes. The Institute's chain of command is embarrassingly weak and feels like it's held together by a fucking toothpick. Pair this with the Institute's poor numbers and their lack in good weaponry, and the Institute can be taken down from the inside and even sometimes from the outside with almost no trouble at all. So without further ado, this is the Institute's final stats. Thank you guys ever so much for watching this video. I know in the last video I said that I would try and get these out a lot quicker, however I didn't manage to do that, so my apologies goes out to all of you for that. I am going to try and get a video out per week unless it's a review. I have got a review coming up that should be out by the end of July. I know I've said that so many times, but this time I actually think it's going to happen, so I will be so excited to start my reviewing phase on this reviewing channel. Anyway, if you made it this far to the video, you definitely need to subscribe because you clearly love this video. Hit the like button, hit the bell, and thank you guys ever so much for watching. Stay safe guys, and I'll see you all in the next video. Peace.